In the driver's lounge where I wrote this, there's a sign that says, "Please continue to be aware that the truck stops in Dallas, Texas and Atlanta, Georgia greater metropolitan area remain off limits to our drivers." I asked my trainer why this was a couple of months back, if robbery and theft were an issue uh, there more than in other places like Chicago. And he said simply, well, they'll shoot you. Drivers are not supposed to carry firearms, but many do. When the office isn't around, they'll say so, and sometimes even when the office is around. Now, on the other side of this lounge, three drivers talked about various loads that dispatchers tried to stick on them and which they refused, either out of monetary necessity, since the loads that are lucrative to the company are not always the most lucrative to the driver, or out of serious safety concerns. The dispatcher, after all, does not die if they send you through a blizzard in the mountains of Idaho and you slide off a cliff. You do. So in the face of very serious and concrete dangers, a palpable force of will seems to have developed in the culture of drivers, especially the will to say no. There are very intelligent, observant drivers, and there are dumb and lazy drivers. But all of them at least have the comportment to say exactly what they think, and then to do exactly what they say. It's an honesty and a will that is unpalatable in academia and unfathomable in the business world as I have seen it. Conflict makes no sense because the threats to individuals in those worlds are abstract and distant. Except when they're not. The organized mass molestation in Cologne, an act of intimidation and, in the proper sense of the word, terror, is direct. Mass shootings are very real. No matter where you live, gang violence is possible, and the invasion and intrusion of Islamists, which looks more and more like a kind of slow game invasion, is probable in due time. Cologne was just the tip of the iceberg, after all, according to German officials. Now, in Batman Begins, there's a scene where Henry Ducard and Bruce Wayne are sparring on the ice, and Ducard tells Batman that his parents' death was not his fault, but was his father's, because his father had, in the crucial moment, lacked the will to act. Not training, but will was the essential ingredient for survival and for defense. It was the same will that Hitler saw was lacking in the French when he ordered his generals to attack. His generals, noting the superior technology and numbers on the French side, insisted that it was suicide, but Hitler knew what Ducard knew. And Churchill, on the side of the Allies, knew it too. It was this lack of a will that bin Laden spoke of when he talked of America. Fighting the Russians, that was hard work. America will be easy, he said. In his short book, The Enemy, on the life and death of bin Laden, Christopher Hitchens argued that we did prove him wrong, but that the forces of superstition and of authoritarianism and of nihilism will always be with us. The fight never ends. The bitch that bore him is always in heat, he concluded, quoting Bertolt Brecht. And the eternal fight, that is, life itself, requires an eternal, equally eternal force of will, the will to say yes to life, and the will to say no to death, at least if one's goal is to survive. Perhaps this is why I like trucking culture so much. There's a vibrancy and an authenticity to the way that everyone talks, even when they're lying, a way they carry themselves, even if a few of them waddle. It's direct, it's concrete, and not abstract or theoretical, the way that everything is in academia, or hopelessly lost in a Kafkaesque labyrinth, as culture is in the larger businesses. Feelings aren't so mixed either. You like this guy and you don't like that guy, and you move on. But personal preferences aside, there are greater things at stake. The West is currently under threat of cultural invasion, and the liberal values which held together tenuously in a cohesive and unified culture are crumbling under their own internal consistencies as the vibrant and self-confident forces of Islam begin to assert themselves. Will the West hold on? Some of it won't. I'm sure that much of it will. And the parts that do hold on and defend their own interests, their own culture, and more concretely, their own cathedrals and women and children, won't have held on because of the will of academics and white-collar desk jockeys. It will have been because of people whose spirit was heat treated for hardness in reality. People like truck drivers, and all the others who, by right of life in the face of death, have learned how to say no.